So it seems like the quintessential New England home has turned into the quintessential haunted New England money pit. And I'm sorry to say that things are about to get much worse from here on out for May and Tom. So let's keep going. Chapter 25. Sorry, Tom exclaimed, breezing through the front door. A client needed hand-holding and I couldn't get away. What time is your book club thing? It's in half an hour, I snapped, stomping upstairs. I've been waiting for you to get home so I could take a shower. Why? He asked, sliding out of his jacket. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I stormed into our bedroom and slammed the door. There was no time to get into it. I didn't even want to go to the damn book club, but I couldn't see a way out of it. I showered and did my hair and makeup in record time, but got tripped up trying to decide what to wear. When I texted back to accept Kat's invitation and express concern that I hadn't yet read the book they were discussing, she replied, it's the Woodland Hills Book Chat and Chug, May. No one reads the book. If I were attending a book club anywhere else, I wouldn't have given my outfit a second thought, but Angela's comments about Woodland Hills being filled with the thin, rich, and fabulous came back to haunt me. Lucky was classy stylish. I'd only seen Evelyn once, but she had Label Mabel vibes, and Kat would look good in a potato sack. Cheryl would be glamorous, and Linda, well, not glamorous. I could only pray that Beretta wouldn't be there. I didn't think I could handle having to interact with her after what I'd witnessed that afternoon. I stared at my small collection of clothing, still not replenished since the break-in, and felt preemptively self-conscious. I finally chose my go-to outfit for cocktails in the city: black jeans, a black cashmere crew neck, and black flats. Felt like a safe bet. It wasn't. The second Kat opened the door, I felt like the angel of death. With her tousled hair and simple white v-neck t-shirt, distressed jeans, and bare feet, Kat looked less like a suburban mom about to host a book club and more like a Calvin Klein model. Yay, she squealed, ushering me inside. I am so happy you're here. You look so chic. I accepted a generous glass of wine from a caterer as the golden doodled Joy wiggled happily around my legs. Your house is beautiful, I told her. You're so sweet, she replied, leading the way into the living room. You made it, Lucky declared, sipping a glass of champagne. She wore a white button-down shirt, collar up, tucked into straight-leg jeans. Her massive diamond studs twinkled through her sleek black hair. She was seated in a large gray and white buffalo check armchair near the front windows. I sat beside her in its perfectly mismatched twin in a gray and white floral print. Kat flopped onto the overstuffed white couch as Joy promptly curled up beside her. The room was cozy and inviting, its decor a luxuriously coordinated hodgepodge. Everything worked together seamlessly but didn't feel staged or forced. I couldn't help but compare it to my own stark walls and bare floors. I took a large gulp of wine. So, how many people are coming tonight? About 35 or so. Wow, this is a massive book club. It's just an excuse to get tipsy and gossip, Lucky explained. How's the house? Asked Kat. It's coming along, I replied. We had some unexpected electrical work, and an exterminator came today, but other than that, I trailed off, watching the women exchange worried glances. An exterminator? Lucky prompted. Why? Scratching in the attic woke Tom up last night, and then something growled at him. Kat leaned forward. Did he see anything? No, but the exterminator found scratch marks, so he set up traps. We have to wait and see what turns up. Kat shivered dramatically. I hope he doesn't catch anything. Me too. It's been unsettling. I'm sure we're just getting used to the house, but Lucky cleared her throat, interrupting me. Have you burned the incense that I gave you? Not yet, I replied guiltily. Does it repel pests? You could say that, Kat chuckled. Lucky shot her a look. Just open up a few windows and burn it along with that candle tomorrow. Clear the vibes. Good idea, I replied, shifting in my seat. I considered mentioning the interaction I'd seen between Beretta and Grill, but the doorbell rang, and Evelyn appeared. My God, I need a drink, she groaned, disappearing into the kitchen. We listened as she loudly asked for a double margarita. Don't be shy with the tequila, she sang, returning to the living room and dropping onto the couch beside Kat. How's the house? She asked, tugging at the cowl neck of her fluffy white sweater. They had an exterminator over today, Kat answered for me. Oh, Evelyn's expression darkened. Damn. A caterer appeared and handed her a tall glass. Things will settle down, she said, turning to me. You'll see. I took a deep breath and started, That's just it. I don't know what's going on, but I don't think it's... The doorbell rang, and loud voices rang out in the foyer. They're here, Kat exclaimed, jumping up. I can't wait for you to meet everyone. Chapter 26. Squeals of excitement filled the home as Kat greeted her guests. I pushed away my worries as my neighbors introduced me to their friends and did my best to keep up. It seemed that every single woman I met had at least 3 children, a healthy career, tight body, and devastatingly effective skincare regimen. I met an executive life coach, the owner of a gym called Bar Excellence, a woman who ran a nonprofit diaper bank out of her basement, and a partner at a large Boston law firm. I listened politely to gossip about people I didn't know, stories of expensive home renovation nightmares, and the exchange of ideas over the best way to tone one's triceps. All the while, I couldn't help but catalog the ways in which I came up short. At one point, I found myself in a small group chatting with the Bar Excellence owner, who'd also lived in Beacon Hill before moving out to the suburbs. How many children do you have? She asked, twirling a piece of long, highlighted hair around a perfectly manicured finger. We don't have kids yet, I replied. The woman's frozen forehead twitched almost imperceptibly. She seemed positively stumped by my response. Why in the world did you move out of the city? Lucky stepped in to change the subject. May is a librarian. 5 women tilted their heads to the side and said, Oh? At the same time. I stumbled my way through an explanation of the current state of my career. Again, Lucky rescued me, turning the conversation by asking a skeletally thin brunette how her online cupcake business was doing. I listened and nodded and smiled and felt completely out of my depth. How exactly did a woman have 5 children in 6 years while simultaneously killing it as a multi-level marketing skincare representative, or maintain a yoga-toned body while running the best bakery in town? I couldn't even remember the last time I'd had my eyebrows waxed. To be fair, the women were friendly and welcoming. It was my own insecurities and social anxiety that made me feel self-conscious. I was chatting with a skincare woman who'd suggested a rich moisturizer to even out my complexion and soften my crow's feet when I felt a hard tap on my arm. I looked over to find a teeny tiny blonde staring up at me. May Kane, right? Yes. Hi. Jane Malik. My husband and I were up against you for number 4. Oh, of course. I'm sorry that things didn't work out, but did you find a house? We're on Beverly, she sniffed, the new 5-bedroom at the turn. I noticed that her teeth had been stained by red wine. How nice, I replied, as though I knew the house. Well, we feel like we dodged a bullet. How so? Oh, old houses like these have appeal, but everyone knows they're money pits. Besides, cul-de-sacs are a little incestuous, don't you think? I'm not sure what you mean. Well, you've got to admit your neighbors are a tight-knit little coven, she said, sipping her wine. That hasn't been my experience. Well, I certainly wasn't clear on the cul-de-sac's reputation when we put an offer on that house. I opened my mouth to defend the neighborhood, even though her words struck a chord of truth when Lucky appeared at my side. Hello, Jane, she said dryly. I'm surprised to see you here. I figured you'd have your hands full with the move. We've been in the house for 3 months now, Jane drawled. We're completely settled. Lucky nodded. You had your work cut out for you. It's so difficult to break out of the cookie-cutter aesthetic that plagues new construction. Jane pursed her lips, but before she could respond, Lucky said, May, I want you to meet Sarah Eberhardt. She's the activities chair at the Woodland Hills Country Club. I know you two will hit it off. She led me into the kitchen, where Taylor Swift blared from built-in speakers. Kat had her arm around the lawyer's shoulders as they belted out Bad Blood. Lucky leaned against the kitchen island and downed the remainder of her wine. I realized the supposed introduction was just an excuse to get me away from Jane. We should take our leave before this place turns, she commented, knowingly. I was relieved. I'd had enough. We said our goodbyes and thanked Kat, who declined our offer to help clean up after the party. The caterers will take care of it, she replied happily, offering us air kisses. Promise you'll go for a walk with me tomorrow. It was only when we were out in the cool night air that I realized that not one person had mentioned a book. What were we supposed to read? I asked. Lucky looked at me in confusion for a moment before laughing. Oh, I think this month's selection was Discovering Your Inner Mother by Bethany something or other. Nonfiction. Yes, we always choose nonfiction. Huh. Is that surprising? No, it's just... I hesitated. I mean, what in the hell is in the water out here? What do you mean? Everyone is just so type A. Don't let that Jane Malik get under your skin. She's just jealous that you got the house and she didn't. Sure, but everyone here is so interesting and accomplished, I can barely keep myself together, let alone have half a dozen children, a business, and a vegan lifestyle blog. Lucky snickered. This town definitely attracts a certain type. Don't get me wrong, everyone was lovely. I just sort of felt like a loser, I admitted, the alcohol allowing me to say more than I might have otherwise. If you only knew half what I know. Lucky pulled her jacket tight against the cold. Everything isn't always what it seems. You're right, I said quickly, feeling that I'd said too much. I think I'm just feeling a little embarrassed that I don't even have a job. What about the library? I actually put my name in for a volunteer project, I told her, trying to sound positive. There you go. Lucky stopped in front of her mailbox and turned, studying me. That'll buy you some time out of the house. I suddenly felt very sober and aware of the dark woods behind us on the island. The disturbing events of that afternoon flooded my mind. I saw Beretta, I started. Ugh, that woman, Lucky sighed. Thank God she never comes to book club. She turned away and began walking up her driveway. Hurry home, she said over her shoulder. I'll text to make sure you made it in one piece. Chapter 27. I'd just closed the door behind me when my phone chimed with a message from Lucky. I typed a quick reply, assuring her that I'd made it home safely, to which she replied, Cat will drag us out for fresh air and repentance tomorrow morning. Drink your water. I smiled to myself, then looked up from the phone, noticing the silence. Tom? I called, walking into the living room. When he didn't respond, I circled around to the foyer and called for him from the bottom of the stairs. No answer. The car was in the driveway. I looked at my phone. No text. Tom! I yelled. I heard something and realized it was footsteps. Someone was climbing the basement stairs. I tensed and held my breath as I listened to the basement door open and close. May? Damn it, I breathed as he came into the kitchen. You scared me. Sorry, I was working in the basement. He went to the sink and poured himself a glass of water. Want one? Sure, thanks. Someone had fun tonight, he said, watching me wobble as I kicked off my shoes. How was it? This town is bursting with drop-dead gorgeous overachievers. Present company included, of course, he laughed. Are you done with the tool bench? Almost. How was book club? As Kat would say, it's the book chat and chug, Tom. No one reads the book. He laughed. Meet anyone interesting? Oh, sure. Lots of fabulous, gorgeous women who run businesses and have at least 5 kids. I don't know about a business, but we can have 5 kids, too. Just say the word. I forced a laugh. Yeah, no. Tom put his hands up. I'm just joking. I noticed there were streaks of dirt on his forearms. What's with the mud? I went for a run after you left, he said, going to the sink to scrub his arms. On that trail in the dark? No, I went out on the main road. I had my headlamp. Oh, still, that's dangerous at night. Did you fall? Yeah, I took a little tumble, he chuckled. Well, that makes me nervous. Just be careful. I am. I just needed to clear my head. Listen, I'm sorry again about running late tonight. I just couldn't get away from that couple. Don't worry about it. Are they selling or buying? Selling. His forehead wrinkled and concerned. Something they said has been bugging me, though. My chest tightened. What was it? Well, I went to their house to give them an opinion of value, and they started telling me all about their kids. Their youngest just graduated from college, so they're downsizing. Anyway, they asked when we were planning to start a family. Ugh, what is it with this town? I huffed. I swear you can't get 2 feet without someone harassing you about having children. No, he laughed. They're nice. They're just having a hard time leaving the house where they raised their kids. But the woman asked where we live, and when I told her, she acted like she felt sorry for us. Really? Yeah, she goes, oh, what a shame. Jeez. Her husband, too, he said, that cul-de-sac's seen a lot of heartache. You're kidding. No, I guess everyone in this town knows about all that stuff in that article you found. You know what? I actually ran into that woman who wanted to buy our house. What was their last name? Mallory? Malik. How was she? He asked, before chugging the rest of his water. Pretty bitchy, I admitted, and she brought up how weird this neighborhood is and how there's so much bad luck here. She's just bitter they didn't get the house. That's what Lucky thought too. I hesitated for a moment before telling him about the interaction I'd seen between Beretta and Grill. I felt like I was on shaky ground, that we'd end up in an argument about the house again, but I had to tell someone what I'd seen. He listened without interruption. Finally, he said, "Please make sure these doors are locked during the day." Of course I will, but Beretta said she saw something in their kitchen that scared her enough she ran out of the house screaming. Don't you think that's weird? They're weird people, May, and Grill is an angry asshole. You remember what a jerk he was at the cocktail party. I don't want you anywhere near him. Right, but I was about to argue that Grill being an asshole wasn't the point when he turned away abruptly and put his glass down on the sink harder than necessary. Whoa, I said, annoyed. Conversation over, I guess. Sorry, I'm just tired. I have an early meeting. Guilt pinged. He had to work the next day. All I had to do was hang around the house. I'll check the doors and meet you upstairs, he said, heading down the back hall. And as he walked away, I noticed splatters of mud across the back of his legs. Chapter 28. A storm rolled in as we slept, leaving a mess of leaves and branches in its wake. On the bright side, the rain made the trail too muddy for the walk Kat had threatened the night before. The path will be swamped, she texted bright and early. Maybe tomorrow. I went downstairs to find the books I'd arranged on the living room shelves strewn across the floor. Tom poked his head in as I was crouching down to pick them up. What happened? I don't know. They were just all over the floor when I came down. Must have been quite the storm, he said dismissively. How could the storm have done this? I replied, annoyed. I'd spent some time arranging those books to look nice on the shelves. He shrugged, bent down to kiss my cheek, and promised not to be home too late that evening. I was about to ask him if he could stay until Ben and his crew arrived, but he was out the door before I had a chance to say another word. I picked up a pile of books and shoved them back onto the shelf. I could organize them nicely later. Then I retrieved one of the leather-bound journals that had somehow landed in the center of the room and flipped through it. It was filled cover to cover with impossibly small, tight, cursive writing. A page with a drawing caught my eye. I recognized the circle contained the same pattern as a stone in our basement. Carefully written beneath it was avarice equals envy dash number 4 of 7. Ben and his crew showed up as I was trying to decipher the tightly packed writing beneath the drawing. I put the journal back on the shelf, planning to revisit it later. Ben promised to wrap things up by the following afternoon and suggested I reached out to our painters for touch-ups. In the basement? No, we're going to need to cut into the ceiling in the hall upstairs and poke around in the walls. Oh, I replied, worried that the more they poked around, the more likely they were to discover another expensive problem. I was organizing the little closet pantry in the back hall when I came across the packet of incense Lucky had gifted us as a housewarming present. I retrieved the glass hurricane and candle from the living room bookshelves and placed them on the kitchen island, then opened the box of incense. Inside were 3 long sticks, a small wooden stand, and a small box of matches printed with the words, "Sacred Space." Lighting all 3 sticks at once seemed like overkill, but the little piece of wood had 3 holes carved in it, so I went for it. The scent immediately brought me back to a t-shirt shop I had loved as a teenager, and images of Birkenstocks and wall tapestries filled my mind. I was washing out the coffee pot and considering making another batch when I heard Ben clomping up from the basement. You smoking pot up here? No, I laughed. A neighbor gave us some incense as a housewarming gift. Smells good. Actually reminds me of church. So the electrical box is all set. We'll be upstairs for the rest of the afternoon. Might get a little noisy, he warned. He wasn't kidding. The banging and sawing coming from the second floor left me wondering if touch-up paint was all we'd need once he was done. I had to get out of the house. From the kitchen window, I could see the storm had blown down a mess of leaves and branches. I decided to do some yard work. Once outside, I was shocked by the mess. I was actually surprised we hadn't lost any trees. I started in the front, first dragging the largest fallen branches around back and throwing them into the woods. Then I gathered clumps of sticks and did the same. It was busy, mindless work, and I soon moved to tackle the backyard. As I worked, I wondered about Beretta and who she'd seen in her house. "He's back," she'd said, in her kitchen. I glanced over at the Reed's yard as I dragged a large branch toward the woods. Girls ranting about those women and their sacrilegious bullshit ran through my mind. I thought of the candle and the incense burning in my kitchen. Sacred space. What if it isn't just our house? What if there are other houses in the cul-de-sac that are haunted? I chucked the branch into the woods. There was no denying that the neighborhood had a bad reputation, and I'd sensed the way Lucky, Evelyn, and Kat seemed to be holding something back. What did they know? Lucky had been so insistent that I burn that incense, and Kat was weird about planting that holly bush she'd given me. I made a mental note to Google the plant that afternoon. But if the whole neighborhood was haunted, then why didn't they just tell me? Wouldn't they warn me if something wasn't right? Unless they had something to do with what was happening in my home. I turned and looked at the little shrub, which I dutifully planted at the corner of our patio. What if they'd done something to it? I worried. God damn it, why had I burned that incense? Maybe it was too late to unring that bell, but I could still get rid of the plant. I strode over, yanked the bush out of the ground, and threw it as far as I could into the woods. Pushing my bangs off my sticky forehead, I remembered that Evelyn had dropped off a little gift bag containing some herbal bath bombs and lotion the week prior. I'd throw them away as soon as I went inside. God only knew what was in that stuff. I could have kicked myself for being so trusting. I had no idea who these women really were. I let myself get swept up in their suburban fabulousness, and they might very well be, well, what were they? Witches? That was ridiculous. I didn't believe in that stuff, but then again, I hadn't really believed in ghosts until I thought there might be one in my house. Maybe they were into some kind of new age mystical something or other. That Jane Moloch woman had referred to the neighborhood as a tight-knit little coven. Whatever it was, I wanted nothing to do with anything remotely spiritual. Growing up, I'd gotten a strong enough dose of magical thinking from my Catholic mother with her obsessive rosary devotions and guilt worship. I absent-mindedly picked up sticks as I went over and over all the interactions that I'd had with those three women. They obviously didn't like Beretta. What if instead of helping her, they were doing something to torment her? "It's back," she'd said to Grill. What if they'd conjured up a... "You have a minute?" Ben boomed from the patio. I screamed and dropped the branch I'd been dragging toward the woods. "Sorry about that. I just want to run through the plan in the second floor." "Sure," I huffed. "Hold on," he said, moving towards me. "You're not wearing gloves." I looked down at my hands. "It's fine. It's just a bunch of branches and sticks." "But they're covered in vines." "They aren't prickly," I explained. "Of course they aren't. That's poison ivy." Chapter 29. I took a long shower and waited for the itching to begin. And waited. The internet warned the rash could begin anywhere from 12 to 48 hours after exposure. It also provided plenty of information about poison ivy in vine form, which I hadn't even known existed. Apparently, the plant could creep its way up anything from fences to trees. "Hairy vine, no friend of mine," warned one website. Tom brought home calamine lotion and cotton balls, but I didn't need them until the following morning. My hands were tingling by 6 o'clock, and by 8 I was ready to crawl out of my skin. There was a patch of rash from my forehead down my left cheek, presumably from brushing my hair back with poison ivy oil-covered hands. But my hands got the worst of it. Despite the internet's assurance that the poison ivy rash doesn't typically spread on one's palms, my hands were covered from fingertip to wrist, and that chalky pink ointment barely took the edge off. Ben and his crew oohed and awed and shook their heads at my misfortune. "I'll go over the new electrical box with you later," Ben offered, correctly guessing that I wasn't in the mood to take on any technical information. I tried to watch television. The couch wouldn't arrive for a few days, but sitting on the floor or alternately a kitchen stool was uncomfortable, and I was too damn itchy to pay attention. By 11 o'clock, the itching drove me outside, and I ended up walking in circles around the cul-de-sac in an attempt to distract myself. I was on my 4th lap when I spotted Beretta coming down her driveway. I desperately wanted to turn and beat feet in the opposite direction, but there was no way I could do so without her seeing me. I held up my hand in greeting as she approached her mailbox. "Morning," she said tersely, before doing an almost comical double-take at my appearance. "Good Lord, what happened?" "I was clearing our yard after that storm and didn't realize the branches were covered in poison ivy." Her forehead crumpled in obvious disbelief. How could anyone miss poison ivy? I shrugged. I didn't know it could be a vine. She made a noise of disbelief and retrieved a pile of mail from her mailbox. Didn't anyone warn you not to garden here unless you know what you're doing? I shrugged again. Didn't think clearing sticks counted as gardening. It was good to see you. She took a step forward and squinted at my hands. Get yourself some rubbing alcohol. I'll ask Grill to write you a prescription for steroid cream. Thank you. That's really generous. The calamine lotion isn't really... Of course it isn't, she snapped. Grill will call in a script to the pharmacy in town. Your husband can pick it up for you? Yes, thank you so much. The itching is driving me... How are things in your home? She asked, cutting me off again. I hesitated under her piercing gaze. Good. I think the electricians are finishing up today, and then it'll just be paint touch-ups, and we'll be done. She fixed me with that stare for another long moment. I'd like to see what you've done with the place. Sure, I'll have you over once we're settled, I replied. We'll look forward to it. She took a step towards her house, and before I could think better of it, I blurted, I saw you in your backyard the other day. Oh? Her expression was blank. I was reading on our patio, and I would have said hello, but you seemed upset. I regretted the words before they'd even left my mouth. Beretta squinted me in an expression that can only be described as pure disgust. I don't know where you were raised, but we don't spy on our neighbors here. No, I'm sorry, you misunderstood. I wasn't... She turned away before I could finish. Over her shoulder, she called, Don't forget to tell your husband to pick up that prescription on his way home from work. Chapter 30. The rain began before I made it to the front door. I just uncapped the bottle of calamine lotion, desperate for relief, when Ben, Sam, and Chris appeared in the kitchen. That's a wrap, Ben announced, clapping his hands together. The boys can load up the truck while I walk you through everything. Reluctantly, I put the cap back on the bottle and followed him to the second floor, fighting the urge to scratch my palms until they bled. We saved you a little money on the blah, 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 Ben began, but I was only half listening as he walked me through the replacement of our old faulty wiring. The fixtures look great, I offered. New semi-flush mount ceiling lights with natural linen drums lit the 2 extra bedrooms, and a black pendant lantern hung above the top of the stairs. There were several places along the walls that needed patching and painting, but it was better than I expected. You got a carpenter or handyman in mind to fix that door? What door? He nodded towards the base of the attic stairs. That one. It's hanging off its hinges. How the hell did that happen? I muttered. He shrugged. Noticed it as we were wrapping up. We tried to get it back in place, but the hardware needs replacing. If you want, Sam has time for it next week. Sure, that would be great. Thank you, I said distractedly. I followed him downstairs and through the back hall. We waited for Sam and Chris, weighed down by tools, to climb the basement stairs before heading down. I caught Sam giving his dad a look as he passed. Ben replied with a small shake of his head. Down we went. My eyes strayed to the corner where Tom said he'd been building a workbench, and though it was too dark to see much, it didn't appear as though there was much to see. There you have it, Ben declared, indicating a matte gray rectangular box affixed to the wall. Looks great, I offered dumbly. He chuckled. Glad to hear it. I'll just be glad to sleep at night without worrying that your house might go up in flames. Is that what you thought would happen? My wife tells me I'm an old worrywart, he said, waving away my concern. But you're all good now. Everything's up to code. I'll get us on the inspector's schedule, and he'll sign off on everything. Thank you, I replied, an unexpected sadness coming over me. I realized the electricians had been good company the past week. Now I'd be all alone. Worries began crowding my mind. Well, if that's everything, I'll get going, said Ben, snapping me back to the present. I turned to head upstairs, eager to leave the gloomy basement, when something on the floor caught my eye. I followed a couple of tracks of muddy footprints from the bulkhead into the basement. Have you guys been using this door a lot? I asked. Not since we got locked down here the other day, Ben huffed. I approached the door and hesitated for a moment before yanking it open. There were more footprints on the wooded stairs. Maybe your husband's been lugging things in and out, Ben suggested. Maybe, I replied, closing the door firmly. Sam can throw a deadbolt on there when he's here next week if you'd like. That would be great, thanks, I replied. The rain kept me inside the rest of the afternoon. I dragged some pillows and blankets into the living room in an attempt at comfort and watched a Murder, She Wrote marathon. Even with the volume up and every light on the first floor blazing, the gray day still managed to seep inside. On the upside, the itching kept me too agitated to be afraid of being alone in the house. I considered calling Angela or even my mother, but holding for the phone for more than a minute drove me crazy. Even if the distracting itch did somewhat outweigh the creepiness in the house, I wasn't about to go wandering around for my headphones. By the time Tom got home, I was ready to climb the walls. "Let's go out to dinner," he suggested, quickly reading my state of mind. I held up my hands. Who would want to eat sitting next to someone who looks like this? "Try putting on that lotion," he suggested, pointing to the cream he'd retrieved for me at the pharmacy. I shot him a look. "What if I run in for pizza and we sit in the park?" "It's raining," I countered, knowing I was being huffy. He sighed. "Let's at least go grab something to go. We need to get you out of this house." A few hours later, my eyes snapped open to the darkness. Irritated at waking up after finally escaping into sleep, I shifted in bed, listening to Tom's steady breathing. When I could no longer ignore the urge, I swung my feet over the side and tiptoed into the bathroom, closing the door behind me as quietly as I could. I was about to head back to bed when someone knocked on the door. Startled, I pulled my hand back from the doorknob. "Tom?" There was no answer. "Tom," I said again, raising my voice. I stood very still, straining my ears, but heard nothing. I reached out for the doorknob again, but just as I wrapped my hand around it, it turned by itself, scraping my sensitive skin. I jumped back and watched the knob turn slowly all the way to the right, then to the left, before snapping back to its resting position. The face of the man who'd broken into our apartment filled my mind. "He's found us," I thought irrationally. "Tom," I'd meant to yell, but his name came out as a whimper. I called for him one last time as loudly as I dared and was again met with silence. It occurred to me that whoever was knocking on the door was in the bedroom with my sound-asleep husband. As my hand closed around the doorknob, I heard a thunderous booming overhead, so loud I thought the ceiling was caving in. I screamed and yanked open the door, then leaped onto the bed, crawling across Tom. He yelled out, snapping awake, "What is it?" But I couldn't answer for my own screaming. Tom leaped out of bed and darted into the bathroom as I flipped on my bedside lamp. "What happened?" he demanded, coming back into the bedroom. "Someone knocked on the door, and then the doorknob turned, and I managed. Didn't you hear that boom?" He rubbed his face with his hands, the picture of exhausted frustration. "Someone was here," I insisted, just as there was a loud knock on our bedroom door. "What the hell?" Tom muttered, moving across the room. "Wait!" I shrieked. "Don't go! I'll call 911. I reached for my phone on the bedstand. "Hold on a minute," he said, picking up one of my slippers and reaching for the doorknob. "Tom!" He pulled the door open and jumped back as though expecting someone to attack. When nothing happened, he crept forward, peeking his head out into the hallway. "Tom!" I pleaded. "Shh!" he hissed, stepping out of the bedroom. I lost sight of him for a long moment and was about to call out to him again when I heard a commotion like he'd tripped or stumbled. "Jesus Christ!" He reappeared, slamming the bedroom door and dragging the bench at the end of our bed in front of it before backing away. "What? What is it?" He turned to look at me for just a second, and I saw pure terror on his face. "I'm calling the police," I said. "Don't." He grabbed the phone from my hand. "Why not?" I demanded, infuriated and terrified all at once. "They can't help us." Chapter 31. I'm calling Virginia. When she showed us the house and we all heard that attic door open, I saw the look on her face. I swear she was petrified. "May, she's a colleague. I can't have this, whatever this is, getting around." "Then what do you suggest we do? Lock ourselves in the bedroom and cross our fingers that the demon doesn't leave the attic?" Tom held up his hands. "Look, it was late. I woke up to you screaming. I was in a panic mode. I can't even be sure what I saw." I stared at him in disbelief. He dumped the remainder of his coffee into the sink. He'd spent the rest of the night sitting at the foot of our bed facing the door, a wooden hanger beside him as a makeshift weapon. I sat beside him for a time, then dozed off after the sun began to come up, but he hadn't slept. Around 7, we finally made a run for the kitchen, desperate for coffee. You might not believe what you saw, but I know what happened last night, I pressed. I have to ask Virginia what she knows about this house. Tom shook his head. She's a competitor, May. How do you think clients will take it if it gets around that I think my house is haunted? I crossed my arms. So what do you propose we do? I think we need to take a deep breath and think logically. He motioned to my hands. This whole poison ivy situation has you exhausted. God damn it, Tom. Enough with this gaslighting bullshit. You said you saw an 8-foot-tall horned demon peek out of the attic stairway at you last night. It was dark in the hallway, and I was all worked up because you were scared. He rubbed at his face with his hands, a gesture of frustration that I was getting pretty sick of. There is something really wrong with this house, I said quietly. And I promise we'll figure it out. How? You won't even acknowledge what's happening. Could we at least call our attorney and ask about that weird needing approval to sell the house thing? If we move or rent out the place or whatever, I want to know what it'll take. Whoa, wait a minute. You want to move? You want to stay? It's not a matter of wanting, May. We can't sell this house. We'll just talk to the neighbors and explain. Even if we got every single one of them to vote yes and allow us to sell this house, the neighborhood association has a lawyer and they hold the deciding vote. That vote will be no. What the fuck are you talking about? He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up my hands. Are you serious? Why didn't you tell me that? I thought you understood. I understood that you made an offer on this house without even consulting me, and then you didn't bother to mention that we can't ever sell? I yelled. You said you liked the house, he shot back. I was too angry to even reply. Please, can we just calm down? He insisted. We'll figure this out, I promise. Oh my God, we never should have done this. What was I thinking agreeing to move out here? You couldn't wait to get out of the city. I wanted out of the apartment. I wanted to feel safe. This is the exact opposite of that. And I'm stuck in this house with no job while a demon hangs out in the attic and all you can say is that I'm just exhausted and you promise you'll fix it? We stared at each other. Finally, he said, I have to take a shower. Upstairs? He looked at me, dark circles under his eyes, pale with exhaustion, his hair at all angles, and forced a smile. I'll just have to be brave. Virginia leaned forward across the table. If you repeat a word of this to anyone but your husband, I will deny having ever said it. Chilled, I just nodded. I rode into town with Tom in silence. As angry as I was with him, there wasn't a chance in hell I was going to stay at that house by myself. After he dropped me off at the library, I texted Virginia, asking her to meet me at Roasted. I'd been itching my hands absent-mindedly, and by the time I got to the cafe, they were on fire. I am serious about this, May. It would ruin the agent's reputation if it got out that she was seeing ghosts. Are you telling me that a real estate agent saw a ghost in my house? I shrieked. Shh. Virginia glanced around to see if any of the other cafe patrons were listening. I stared at her, biting my tongue, Tom's warning echoing in my mind. She closed her eyes a long moment, as if composing herself. When I showed you the house, my understanding was that a coworker had had a strange experience there. Hearing that attic door open by itself that night did give me pause, but like your husband said at the time, an old house is bound to have some creaks and groans. Stop covering your ass and just tell me what happened, I seethed. Virginia squinted at me. From what I understand, my coworker was in your home for a showing. Actually, it was with the people you bid against, the Molochs. She smirked. Let me tell you, they were pissed they didn't get the place. That woman should have been friendlier. You really never know who's going to end up holding the keys to your future, and I certainly wouldn't want to be on the wrong side of Lucky Forbes. I made a get-on-with-it motion. Virginia pulled back. What happened to your hand? And your face, for that matter? Poison ivy, I replied flatly. Have you been to the doctor? I just stared at her. As I was saying, she continued after a beat, the agent said the showing went off without a hitch and the Molochs made an offer on the spot. It happened after they left, when she was closing up the house. Virginia scooted her seat forward and lowered her voice. She was making the rounds, turning off all the upstairs lights, when she heard that door to the attic bang open. She said it startled her, but when you've been showing houses for long enough, you know old houses have weird quirks, so She went to close it, and she says something growled at her. "Oh, no," I breathed. She said it sounded big, like a big cat, a mountain lion or something. Did she see anything? No. She ran downstairs, intending to run straight out the front door, but the light in the kitchen flickered on and off, and when she turned to look, there was an old woman in the kitchen, standing beside the garage door. Well, Jocelyn said she was so caught off guard, she said the first words out of her mouth were an apology. She goes, "I'm sorry, you're here to see the house?" Then she heard that attic door slam shut, so she looked behind her, certain there'd be some big animal at the top of the stairs ready to pounce, but there was nothing there. So she turned back to the kitchen to tell the woman they needed to leave, but the woman was gone, vanished. I slumped back in my chair and pushed my hair from my face with my burning hands, but my bangs stubbornly fell back into my eyes. I was overdue for a haircut, and abruptly, as if my brain needed an escape from the conversation, I found myself pining for my old Newberry Street hairdresser. Virginia snapped me back into focus. "Look, I feel terrible, but what would you guys have thought if I told you? At least we would have had the full picture." "I apologize. I know my coworker—" "Jocelyn," I corrected steadily. Virginia blinked. "That's right. What she saw really rattled her. She's taken a leave of absence." "Poor her." Virginia sipped her coffee. "So, I assume you've been experiencing something unwelcome in the home?" "Ugh, can you stop choosing your words so goddamn carefully?" I fumed, then quickly apologized. "Sorry, I haven't been sleeping well. And yes, we've had unwelcome experiences at the house. I wanted Tom to reach out to our attorney to find out what other options there are if we want to move. I didn't really understand that neighborhood association restriction when we signed it." Virginia grimaced. "What?" "Nothing, it's just that those things can be pretty binding." I fought the urge to dump my coffee into the woman's Louis Vuitton tote. Virginia opened her mouth to say something, then closed it. She stared at the table for a moment before looking up and simply saying, "I should have told you." I considered yelling, "No shit!" Instead, I swallowed my anger. I honestly don't know if we would have listened. Chapter 32. I went straight back to the library. There's no denying the cul-de-sac's long-standing reputation for so-called bad luck. Maybe there was something, or someone, or a few someones causing it, or fostering it, or hell if I knew what they were up to, but my neighbors were obviously hiding something. I was determined to find proof that Tom, or anyone else for that matter, couldn't deny. "Heavens to Betsy," Verity gasped as I tried to sneak past the reference desk. "What did you get yourself into?" "Oof, is that poison ivy?" Jenny chimed in. "It is," I replied, embarrassed. "Are you here to look up treatment?" asked Verity, unable to hide her excitement. "We just got a subscription to Medline Professional." She turned to her computer and began typing away. "No, thank you. A neighbor wrote me a prescription," I explained. "I'm actually here to do research about my neighborhood." Verity raised an eyebrow. "What sort of information are you looking for?" "I had some luck with the news databases you shared with me last time I was here, but I was actually wondering if you could show me the local Woodland Hills collection you mentioned." "Oh, shoot," she muttered. "I'm sorry. I told the director about your interest in organizing that stuff, but it fell out of my head, and I never circled back about it. I apologize. What a jerk I am." No, I protested. "Really, I'm happy to lend a hand if you need it, but I just wanted to take a look to see if it might contain anything interesting about my neighborhood." Her gaze landed on my hands. "Jenny, do we still have those old cotton gloves we used for that archive collection?" Jenny ducked down behind the desk, disappearing for a moment before popping back up with a pair of white cotton gloves. Feeling chastened, I took them from her. "Thank you, but I'm afraid the cream on my hands will ruin them. Maybe I should just wait until this clears up." "Nonsense. We have at least 10 pairs back here, and we barely have use for them," Verity assured me as she moved from behind the desk. "Follow me." Up on the second floor, in a far back corner, sat 2 leather chairs angled in front of a tall wooden bookshelf crammed with paperback books of all sizes, loose papers, and spiral-bound documents. "Here's the hodgepodge," Verity announced. "There's no rhyme or reason, so I'm sorry to say you'll just have to dig. Those boxes," she explained, pointing to several banker's boxes beside the bookshelf, "belong to the collection, and so does this." She reached behind the bookshelf and pulled out a stack of 11 by 18 sheets held together by a large black clip. We really should store these properly, but, well, we don't. Anyhow, I think this is a miscellany of town plans, she explained before sliding them back into place. That's about it. Is there anything else I can do to help? No, this is perfect, I replied, overwhelmed. Happy hunting, she said, squeezing my arm before retreating into the stacks. I slid out of my jacket and dropped it onto one of the chairs. Planning out my attack, I decided the only way to tackle the glut of books and papers was to start with the top shelf and move on down until I touched every document. I gingerly pulled out a stack, surprised at how little the gloves got in the way, and got started. Some items were easy to discount. Most of the paperbacks turned out to be novels written by local authors. I flipped through a book detailing Woodland Hills history, but nothing stood out. As I worked, I couldn't help but attempt to organize the collection. I arranged the novels in alphabetical order by author as I went, nonfiction on the second shelf the same way, planning to consult a Dewey Decimal cheat sheet to organize them properly at a later date. Old habits die hard. The documents I came across, collections of poems and essays, and some neatly arranged newspaper clippings I relegated to shelf 3. I was unsure of how to organize them, but I knew from past projects that the perfect system would eventually reveal itself. I was so wrapped up in the search for information and the blissful distraction of organizing that I almost forgot about my itchy, burning hands until a rogue wire binding from a document titled The Birds of Woodland Hills slipped beneath my glove and scraped the edge of my palm. I sucked in a breath and dropped the pages before sinking into one of the leather chairs. As I sat and waited for the pain and the sudden, overwhelming urge to scratch the hell out of my hands to subside, the edge of the stack of papers behind the bookshelf caught my eye. I reached for them and held them on my lap. A sticky note on top read, "The contribution of Elwyn Payne to Woodland Hills development and design," in spiky cursive. Payne, the guy who designed the cul-de-sac. Excited, I flipped through the first pages, finding a collection of annotated drawings of the town park, the downtown streets, and the layout of the commercial district. Next were illustrations of Town Hall, the library, apparently as it was before renovation, the firehouse, and the police station. I stopped at a blank page holding one word, neighborhoods. I quickly flipped through until I came upon the familiar layout of the cul-de-sac. The rendering was far more detailed than the ones that came before it, and I remembered that Virginia said the developer had created the cul-de-sac for his own family. There was the bridge over the stream, labeled Akron Pike, and the 7 perfectly spaced houses with bands of trees separating the properties. Care had been taken to show the surrounding woods, the trails, and the lake, which diverted into the 2 streams that ran around the cul-de-sac, behind the houses, through the woods, before dumping into the pike. I studied our property. A little rectangle represented our house, and a tiny circle had been drawn in the bottom left-hand corner. I squinted at it, then sat back in realization. It was a drawing of the keystone in our basement. I scanned the page. The other houses had little circles within them, too, each with a unique design. My eyes landed on the oversized island at the center of the street. Swirls indicated the shrubs and bushes and lines of the trees. Markings in the middle of the island caught my eye. I squinted and brought the paper closer to my face. "You've got to be fucking kidding me," I whispered as I realized what I was looking at. Chapter 33. Is there any chance you could give me a quick ride home? Are you sure? Tom asked after a long pause. Yeah, I said, keeping my tone light. I'm exhausted. I'm sure everything will be fine. I didn't tell him what I'd seen on the rendering of the neighborhood. I had to be certain it was really there, and I had a plan. My idea began to feel shaky as we rode over the bridge into the cul-de-sac. I waved goodbye to him, let myself inside, and headed straight for the bookshelves in the living room. I grabbed all of Talbot's journal and flipped through until I found the page with the drawing of our keystone. Avarice equals envy, number 4 of 7, I read aloud to myself. I flipped the page and scanned the complete list. I didn't understand what it had to do with what was on that island, but I knew I was on the right track. I copied the list onto the back of the plan, returned the journal to the bookshelf, then headed out the door. By the time I'd made it up Lucky's front steps, my confidence in the so-called plan fell apart. I turned to sneak away when the door swung open behind me. May? I spun around. There she stood, in a gray cashmere sweater, pristine white keds, and those massive diamond studs twinkling through her shiny black hair. "Hi," I said, instantly aware of my own bedraggled appearance. "Sorry, I came over to ask you something, but then I thought maybe I should text instead." She glanced at my hands. "I heard you had a run-in with the poison ivy, but for Christ's sake, May, we warned you not to garden." I sighed. "Come on in. I have to show you something." I pulled a folded-up photocopy from my bag as I followed her inside. Lucky studied it for a moment. "Are those architectural plans for your house?" "Definitely not," I replied. I didn't feel right going to Kat with the information. She had her kids at home, and so did Evelyn. Not that I would have been comfortable approaching her. Something about Evelyn gave off chaotic vibes, and I didn't need anyone making me feel more anxious than I already was. That left Lucky. Her kids were away at school, and I knew she was holding something back about the neighborhood. "Come into the kitchen. I'll make coffee." Lucky went to her Nespresso machine as I smoothed the paper out on the kitchen table. I'd managed to capture the entire neighborhood rendering by taping together 2 8x10 photocopies. "I've been thinking about you," she said as she pulled out cream and sugar. "How do you feel about a housewarming dinner party?" "Oh," I stammered, "I don't know." "You need to breathe some life into that house. Poor Olive was basically a shut-in these past few years." I considered the suggestion. It wasn't a bad idea, save for the fact that Olive Talbot was haunting my house and there was a horned demon in our attic, not to mention the possibility that I suspected my neighbors might have been the ones to conjure those spirits. Plus, I didn't cook. "I'll have to think about it," I hedged. "Sugar?" I accepted the blue and white bowl. Lucky pointed a perfectly manicured finger at the table. "So, what do we have here?" "It's the cul-de-sac." She leaned closer. "How interesting. Look at all our cute little houses." After studying the image for a long moment, she said, "And those tiny circles. It matches the design on our keystone in the basement." I took a deep breath. "Ours too." "Huh, I wonder if they have any meaning." "I found this plan at the library, and there were some drawings in Olive Talbot's journal that—" "You read her journal?" I nodded. "And?" She motioned for me to continue. "And those symbols each represent one of the 7 deadly sins." Lucky stared at me blankly. I studied her face, trying to determine if she already knew that information, but she appeared genuinely surprised. I put my finger on the symbol in my house. "Ours symbolizes envy." She sat up straighter in her chair. "And ours?" "Greed," I replied quietly, then quickly added, "I doubt it means anything, but that's not really what I want to show you." "Hold on, where did you get this?" "I found it at the library, in a collection of local books and stuff," I explained. "Look at the island." Lucky squinted, then picked up the paper to get a closer look. "That's not possible." "You didn't know it was there?" I asked, unable to hide the suspicion in my voice. "Absolutely not. Who would put that in the center of a residential neighborhood? It's got to be against the law." "But it's on the plan," I argued. "Just because the developer planned for it doesn't mean they carried out his wishes." "But what if they did?" Lucky stared out her front window. "I suppose there's only one way to find out." From the end of her driveway, the tangle of trees and thick underbrush across the street looked impenetrable. The hydrangea blooms that dotted the edge of the island had turned rusty. Overhead, old oaks and maples, their leaves just beginning to change with the season, towered over stout pines, overgrown grass, and shrubbery. "There is a note on the plan that says it's a perfect circle, with a 66-yard circumference." "Who the hell measures in yards?" Lucky remarked wearily, pulling on a pair of gardening gloves. "It's so damn wild, I wonder if we'll even be able to get in there, let alone find a cemetery." "Do you think it's really the entire family?" Lucky shook her head. "Let's get this over with." "Keep an eye out for poison ivy," I warned, following her across the street. "I'm more worried about the ticks," she replied. We stopped again at the edge of the island. After a minute or two of walking along the perimeter to find a way in, I spotted a break in the thick brush. "Let's try there." It was slow going. The ground was surprisingly rocky and uneven beneath the overgrown weeds. Prickly bushes grabbed at our clothing, and we had to shove branches out of our way with every step. Only a few steps in, the island was gloomy and dark, the trees overhead blocking out the light. After several minutes of baby stepping along behind Lucky and defending myself against the limbs she pushed aside, I wondered if we were on a fruitless search. The ground was obscured beneath years of dead leaves and fallen branches. If the gravestones turned out to be the kind that lay flat, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. "Do you see anything?" "Not yet," Lucky called back. I was staring down, focused on not twisting my ankle on a particularly rocky patch, when a branch snapped back and caught me right in the forehead, stopping me dead in my tracks. I reached up to rub what would certainly turn into a welt. "Did you say something?" "No," I huffed, plodding along. I was so intent on shielding myself from flying branches that I bumped into her when she stopped abruptly. "Holy Mary, Mother of God," she whispered. "What is it?" I demanded, peering over her shoulder. We'd reached the center of the island. Impossibly, it was a barren patch of dirt, barren save for a tight formation of headstones. The trees overhead allowed in sunlight, but only enough to emphasize the exceptional creepiness of the cemetery. "It looks exactly like the drawing." "How in the hell is this possible?" I breathed. "Someone must be taking care of this place." I scanned the perimeter of the clearing. I don't see any paths in or out. "It's too perfect, like someone just smoothed the dirt with a rake." Lucky took a step forward. "Don't!" I shrieked. She ignored me and headed straight for the gravestones. I was suddenly terrified, standing alone at the edge of the circle. I stepped out onto the hard-packed dirt, almost expecting it to give way like quicksand, but it held firm. "These graves are set so close together, the people must have been cremated," Lucky guessed, staring intently at the headstones. "Elwyn Payne," she read, pointing to the first headstone. "I bet that's his wife Lorelei, next to their son, maybe?" She guessed of the two graves behind it. "That one has 2 names on it," Lucky grimaced. "Here's another one with 2 names, and then a single guy." 6 graves arranged in a triangle, I pointed out needlessly. "This area is 13 yards across," I added. "At least that's what the plan says." "A 13-yard circle within a 66-yard circle," Lucky said angrily. "I know, I get it." "Well, at least that makes one of us." "You really had no idea about this?" She shook her head. "No wonder our houses are so haunted." "I knew it!" I shouted. "You do know what's going on here." "I absolutely do not. I'm just making an educated guess. There's a cemetery located smack dab in the middle of the neighborhood." "But you did know. You all knew. Maybe not about the cemetery, but you knew our house was haunted and you didn't warn us." "We tried to—" "What else aren't you telling me?" I plowed on. "Are you in some sort of coven? The candles and incense, the damn bath bombs? Were you trying to get the ghost to focus on us so you could—" "Hello? Lucky? May?" a voice called out. "Are you guys in there?" We froze as if we'd been caught doing something mischievous. "Hello?" Evelyn called again. "Are you okay?" "Damn it all," Lucky muttered, then hollered, "We're fine. Coming out now." Moments later, we struggled out of the underbrush, just feet from Evelyn and her 2 youngest boys, who were strapped into an extravagant jogging stroller. "There you are. I thought I heard your voices. Find anything more than a bunch of ticks?" "You could say that," Lucky drawled. Evelyn looked between us. "What were you 2 up to?" "I found an old plan of the cul-de-sac this morning at the library," I began, but was interrupted when one of the boys let out a piercing scream. Evelyn pulled a box of Cheez-Its from a compartment in the stroller and handed it to the squirming children. "Hands to yourself, okay? They've been on their tablets all morning, so I thought fresh air would do them good," she explained. "Anyhow, you found something about our neighborhood at the library? How cool." I looked to Lucky, hoping she would explain, but she was busy brushing off her legs. "The thing is," I began, "the guy who built our neighborhood, he, buried himself and his entire goddamn family in there," Lucky cut in, swatting at the front of her jacket. Evelyn looked stricken. She stared into the mess of foliage. "You're not serious." We followed her gaze and stared into the trees in silence. "Is that even legal?" she demanded. "It must have been when they built the neighborhood," I guessed. "We have to tell everyone," Evelyn enthused. "This makes so much sense. Maybe those people's spirits are restless because they've been forgotten. Maybe that's why our houses are so haunted. We should, hold a memorial service or something." "Or something," Lucky muttered. Chapter 34. What's a scuttlebutt? We turned in unison as Linda Rust came into view. She wore one of her husband's t-shirts and looked as if she hadn't brushed her hair in days. "You weren't traipsing around in there, were you? You'll end up with the Lyme." "They found a graveyard," tattled Evelyn. "Get out of town," Linda replied, sounding more amused than surprised. The older of Evelyn's two youngest children, I couldn't remember which was which, but I guessed it was either Riker or Rogue, began slamming his feet against the stroller, screaming, "Stop talking! I want the phone, Mommy! Stop talking! I want the phone now!" "Sweet pea," Evelyn intoned. "Mommy's chatting with her friends, okay? Here you go, buddy." She handed him her cell phone while the rest of us did our best to conceal judgment. "So who's buried in there?" Linda asked, once the boy had settled down. "The guy who built our neighborhood for his whole family," Lucky informed her, in a flat tone. "Huh, no wonder we're all so damn haunted." "That's what I said," Evelyn pointed out. "Is that even legal?" Linda asked, again parroting Evelyn's sentiments. Lucky and I both shrugged. "What are all of you doing out here?" Cheryl Kingsley demanded, sashaying towards us. "There's a bunch of bodies in there," Linda replied, pointing at the island. Horrified, Cheryl stopped in her tracks. "Has anyone called the police?" "It's a graveyard, a really old one," I explained. "The guy that built our neighborhood buried his family in there," Evelyn chimed in. Cheryl resumed her approach. As she came closer, I realized that her face was a shocking shade of red, as if she'd gotten a horrible sunburn. "Heaven above, are you all right?" Linda asked. "Why wouldn't I be?" Cheryl sounded genuinely confused before Linda's meaning dawned on her. "Oh, this?" She waved a hand in front of her face. "I had a peel." "But your lips," Linda said with concern. "The swelling will subside in a few days," she said, flipping her hair dismissively. "At a certain age, one really must make more of an effort than bar soap and off-brand face lotion." Linda scoffed, obviously offended. Cheryl ignored her. "Who found the cemetery?" Lucky and I raised our hands. "How did you know to look for it?" I told her. "Tell them about the keystones," Lucky prodded. "Right," I said reluctantly. "So the plan, the one that shows the whole neighborhood, those designs on our keystones symbolize the 7 deadly sins," Lucky cut in. "Keystones?" said Evelyn. "Do you mean that round thing in our basement?" "Yes," I confirmed. "Hi!" Kat called out, jogging towards us. We all turned to look at her. "Are you talking about the dinner party?" "What dinner party?" Evelyn asked excitedly. "Oh, sorry. May, Lucky and I were talking, and we think you should throw a dinner party, like a housewarming type thing." I shot a look at Lucky. "We discussed it briefly, but I hadn't really had time to think about it yet." "I know, it could be a Halloween party," Evelyn suggested. "How appropriate," Cheryl sniffed. "Do we absolutely have to wear costumes?" Lucky moaned. "Say yes," Evelyn enthused. I guess so," I agreed, unwillingly. "Adults only, right?" Kat added hopefully. I nodded, already dreading it. "So, if you weren't talking about the party, what were you all chatting about?" Kat asked. "Lucky and May found a cemetery on the island," Cheryl declared, pointing to the trees. Catherine's eyes widened. "There's something weird about the keystones in our basement, too," added Linda. "I want to see that map you found of the neighborhood. Where is it?" "On my kitchen table," Lucky answered. "What map?" asked Kat. Chapter 35. We stood around Lucky's kitchen table, staring down at the taped-together photocopy of our neighborhood plan. "The place was downright chilling," Lucky insisted. "It was as smooth as a sand trap. Someone must be tending to it." "Who?" Cheryl demanded. "Hell if I know," Lucky muttered. Cheryl turned to me. "And you just happened to stumble upon this map in the library, out of the blue?" "No, not out of the blue. I went there looking for information about this neighborhood. There are weird things happening in our house, and since none of you felt like cluing me in, I had to go looking for answers somewhere." Even though it was true, I regretted snapping immediately. It wasn't like me, but my hands were screaming. I was exhausted from lack of sleep and pissed that these women had kept such a huge secret. "We were hoping we could protect you," Kat offered. "So much for that," said Linda. "Things have gotten so much worse lately." The women nodded in agreement. "Yeah, ever since we got back from the Cape, the house is almost unbearable," Evelyn added. Wasn't that the same weekend you moved in? Cheryl asked me pointedly. That's just a coincidence, Lucky said dismissively. What I want to know about are these little symbols in our keystones. Yeah, why do you think they have something to do with sinning? Evelyn asked. The 7 deadly sins, I clarified. Olive Talbot listed them out in her journal. You read her journal? Cheryl asked, disgusted. It was in a box in the garage, and I was flipping through and saw the drawing of our keystones, so... It doesn't matter, Lucky interrupted. The keystones represent the 7 deadly sins. That's the most important thing. But, why? Evelyn asked. That Elwyn Payne guy had to be super religious, I guessed. I mean, the names here, Gehenna Circle, Akron Pike. I was met with blank stares. Gehenna means hell, and Akron was a river in the underworld in Greek mythology. Says who? Cheryl sniped. The Bible and Greek mythology, I sniped back, feeling like they somehow blamed me for the whole mess. Look, Linda cut in. Evelyn, you've got gluttony, Cheryl, pride, I have sloth, and May is envy. The Reeds are wrath, Lucky you landed on greed, and Kat, honey, you're lust. Kat giggled. Sure is accurate for Grill and Beretta, Linda pointed out. We have to tell Beretta, said Kat. Lucky shook her head. They are not open to discussing the hauntings anymore. They might be now. Beretta was really upset a couple days ago, I told them, describing the interaction I'd witnessed between the Reeds. What an asshole, Linda muttered. So it tracks that things are getting worse in everyone's houses, then, Lucky pointed out. We fell silent, each lost in our own thoughts. Eventually, Evelyn spoke up. Beneath the little circle in my house, it says orange sapphire. The stones in our keystone are orange. Do you think there's any chance they're real? Let's hope so, Cheryl enthused. Mine says amethyst. Lucky wins the prize, though, Kat pointed out. Beneath the drawing of Lucky's keystone were the words yellow diamond. Maybe this Elwyn Payne guy wasn't so bad after all, Lucky quipped, a huge smile lighting up her face. Nervous laughter broke out. There's another circle here, too, said Kat, pointing above the bridge into the neighborhood over Akron Pike. It's one of those little circles in a circle. I've been seeing those everywhere, I said. What is that? Olive told us to draw them for protection, Linda explained. Did she say why? Not really, but those circles did make a difference for a little while. Until you and your husband moved into her house, Cheryl said pointedly. Enough of that, Lucky chided. She was researching the whole haunting thing, said Evelyn. Like you. Weird coincidence, right? I think she's haunting my house, I admitted. The confession was met with looks that varied from concern, Kat and Lucky, to disbelief, Cheryl, to amusement, Linda. This is all well and good, but what do the 7 deadly sins have to do with what's going on with us? So the guy who built this cul-de-sac was obviously a total religious freak, and now he and his family are haunting the hell out of us? Said Linda. How do we get rid of them? Yeah, and what are we going to do about those graves? Evelyn asked. What I want to know is who's keeping that little cemetery so neat and tidy, said Lucky. I'll bet it's Grill Reed, Linda chuckled humorlessly, doing angry little satanic rituals and selling his soul for a nice yard. So there you have it. The neighbors did know something was going on. They are all haunted. But can May trust them? I mean, it's a pretty big secret to keep. We'll find out next week. And in the meantime, remember, you can head over to Patreon for $4 a month. You can sign up for no chitter chatter, and you'll have more of like an audiobook listening experience for this story. And if you haven't yet, please do follow me on Instagram if you're there. It's the best way to keep updated on when new chapters are coming out and other projects I'm working on. And if you know someone who likes cozy horror, please consider sharing this story with them. I would really appreciate it. All right, meet you back here next week.